What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Hobby Pants. Got a little something special tonight, something I'm pretty excited for. Many of you guys know about the release of that new Emperor's Children box. And, well, the release of a new box means we've got to get one ready for our Cave Reps stream. So that's what we're going to be working on this evening, trying to figure out an efficient way to get an army painted with very little effort, but still produce a decent looking model. So just buckle up, guys. Tonight might be one of those that we fail and that we don't like anything that we've accomplished, and we go right back to the drawing board for the next attempt. Adversely, we might find that we really like it. And, you know, we're going to learn that together here this evening. I have the Lord Exultant from this new box. I went ahead and put a black primer on it to get us kicked off, but most of that is going to go away. We're very quickly going to shift that into the nice purpley hues Emperor's Children are known for. Well, I think we can just get right into it. Of course, before we do so, I definitely want to say thank you guys for checking out this video, whether it's live or after the fact. That's going to really help us grow this channel and share our art, which is super important to me. So I appreciate all of the help and all of the support that we have seen for sure. If you're new to the channel, definitely encourage you hit that subscribe button. We do paint a couple of times a week right here on stream, and we're always happy to hang out and share the progress as it goes. Also, make sure you like the video. Those likes go a long way towards helping YouTube let them know it's safe to show other people and kind of introduce them to what we've got going on in here at the cave. Big shout out to our sponsors, of course, Artis Opus with these nice brushes here. You're going to see used plenty this evening, more of the dry brushes than anything else. Big shout out to Too Thin Coats. We're going to see some of them, but you know, tonight's project is going to be quite a few different lines of paint to get accomplished what we want to get accomplished. Big shout out to Spray Gunner, bringing us our airbrush and all of our airbrush accessories, and of course Game Envy for all of the hobby desk tools that really kind of help you out here, like these holders right here. Pretty sharp stuff. So all of that aside, let's go ahead and get into it and talk about what we are looking to do tonight. Many of you guys are familiar with the term slapchop. You know, old fine arts, you might hear it as something like grisaille, right? That would be, but basically what it does is creates a value sketch with your darkest points and your lightest points clearly defined. Now, what we're going to be doing this evening is, rather than the black and the white for that value sketch, we're going to be using a series of metallics. And then we are going to be applying filters over those to change the shape of those metallics. The idea being that we get to have nice vibrant colors under them. However, they've got a bit of that luster that you'd see from a metallic. So fingers crossed we can get something that we're happy with. But, you know, even if we don't, you know, we're going to have a good time sitting around painting. So that's really what it's all for. What's going on, Jet? I did indeed say Emperor's Children, and I'm excited to say so. This is an army I've been looking forward to getting my hands on for quite some time. And we've got pilots here on the channel that are chomping at the bit as well to play this army. So the faster we can get it painted up and table ready, the better. Thanks for tuning in, Jet. Always great to see you. So I think for our first step this evening, we are going to go ahead and take this black that we've got on here now, and we're going to go ahead and just drop, we're going to drop a purple on here, right? I don't really want a black in the recesses. I want something very dark. The purple that we're going to go with, this Von Evil purple, is, as you see, very dark and very close to black. But, you know, I just want something that's not just black. What's going on, William Payne? Good evening to you as well, sir. I hope everybody is doing fine on this fine Thursday evening. We are looking at a change to the content. Our Tuesday night paint streams are going to continue every Tuesday night. Our Monday Wake and Make painting series is also going to continue every Monday. However, Thursday is going to be a flex night for us. Sometimes we'll be able to stream, sometimes we won't. Next week, for example, we do have our content planning meeting for Cave Reps. I did stream through that last week, and I'll just be honest with you, I missed hanging out with the Gob Squad. So moving forward, I'm going to make sure I'm present at those content planning meetings, as that membership community over on the Hobby Goblins channel means the absolute world to us. And any opportunity I have to spend with them, I'd like to soak up moving forward. So, just keep that in mind. Thursdays we may see a stream. Thursdays we may not see a stream. But we are still going to bring you 2 paint streams each and every week without fail. So don't fret. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being here this evening. So what we've got is a sub-assembly. I've got the cloth and the cloak that's going to be going over top of him. Well, we're just going to put that away for right now. Our main focus tonight is going to be getting our armor panels where we want them to be, and kind of creating that dynamic. Once we've got that, then we can go ahead and attach that cloak, and then we can go ahead and get some paint on it. I may paint it in sub-assembly and attach after the fact. I may attach it and then paint it. I have no plans for that, so we're just going to play that one by ear. As always, we're going to get this ugly mug out of the way and let the focus be this thing we've got on the table this evening. So as always, got to check the airbrush. We did put it to use yesterday, and I cleaned it fairly thoroughly, but without fully disassembling it. We don't know how it's going to spray until we actually get into work on it. So let's go ahead and give it a test, and then we're going to use this to just go ahead and block in all of that purple. Looks like it's spraying pretty nice. We'll go ahead and use this to go ahead and block in that purple. And then we are going to begin our zenithal steps. So, Von Evil. Let's go. Definitely would love to know what everybody has on their hobby desks this evening. What's the big project that you're working on, trying to get ready? Is it something that you've got a deadline for an event? Is it something you've been wanting to paint for a while and are just now getting around to it? Let me know right here in the comments. I've got a nice chill hop station on YouTube in my ear. Gets a little musical accompaniment is always nice here in the studio. I am flying solo this evening. No producer to hang out and chat with, so I'll be as attentive to chat as I possibly can. But we've got some work to do. If you have any questions, make sure you do drop them right here in the comments. And if if you're watching after the fact, equally as said. Matter of fact, comments on the video after the fact are more valuable to the algorithm. Not to keep you quiet in here hanging out with me, for those of you guys that are here this evening, but just a little food for thought. If you want to help us grow the channel, dropping comments on those videos on demand is possibly the best way to support the channel in terms of growth. So we've got our purple where we like it, and I'm just going to show you guys what I'm looking at here. We're not looking for opacity, we're looking for flow. Right? There is going to be some opacity here, I'm sure, but we just want to make sure. Do you see how we touch the side of the cup, and you see how it wants to gather and kind of hang out right there? So that tells me we want to loosen it up just a little bit more. People talk about the consistency of milk. I've never painted with milk personally. Maybe that works for people. Right? I'm always going to be looking for how does the paint interact with the cup that I'm working with. Does it move down the cup at a good pace? Does it slowly crawl? Right? We want it to move rather freely down the cup. All right? So here's an example of such a thing here. Get some paint on here. Let it collect. See, that's kind of moseying on down. Now, we're going to be able to run with that. That's going to spray just fine. If I was looking to have any kind of transparency to the paint that I was working with this evening, then I would thin it a bit further than that. But since we're looking for, coverage, I think that's going to do well. Jet, more EC, started on some Noise Marines. I'll be making things hard for myself and giving each squad a unique theme. Well, making things hard for yourself does have its payoffs. I look forward to seeing what you come up with there. William Payne, not working on anything currently, as I base coated 2 Dreads, 2 Vindicators, 1 Whirlwind, 1 Gladiator Reaper, Gilliman, 64 other infantry, and a partridge in a pear tree today. That is fantastic. That sounds like a very productive day. Make sure we got our spray cooking right. Little splattery. So let's go ahead and consult our airflow. Now this is a size 4 needle in here as well. It's the bulk of what we've been using on stream here. But that does ask a bit more from our air pressure as well. All right, so crank the air pressure up just a little bit, and that should be good enough to just go ahead and get some purple on this guy here. Now it might not even be evident that the purple is laying down because it's going over black. So we're just gonna slowly do it. Drop 2 thin coats on it. You know, shout out to my guys at Transatlantis Games. Let that dry down, and then we will do it again. Now, if we were going for something showcase, something to like really show off, like, oh, look at what I can do sort of thing, well, we're probably gonna have a lot more sub-assembly on the model. But again, that's not the mission tonight. The mission for tonight is efficiency. We want something that we can replicate multiple times very quickly. And that will be the thing that will empower us to get an army painted in a hurry. And like I said at the top, I am fully prepared for the test model that we're working with this evening to not be successful and to go back to the drawing board. But, you know, the reality of it is that everybody painting is going to run into that at some point or another. You know, and if you're not, you're probably just not pushing yourself, right? It's okay to fail. It's okay to have an idea and that idea not work out. That's what's going to have you go back to the drawing board and really crank out adjustments and changes that in the future will yield better results. So just remember, the work we're doing for today is for the benefit of tomorrow as well, not just for the project that we have at hand. Yep. Yeah, shout out Harbor Freight for these very on-brand nitrile gloves for sure. Now when we get to our filters this evening, we are going to be swapping to the smaller needle. I've got an airbrush preloaded with one already at the ready already. So we're going to let that cook. And while that dries down just a little bit, let's talk about what our goal is this evening. We are going to be taking a couple of shades of metallic. Okay, earthquake in the studio, love that. All right, we've got steel, we've got gunmetal gray. Both of them are very close. You can kind of see by the colors on here. Gunmetal's probably just a touch darker. This is a newer bottle of steel as well. Being that it's a little bit lighter, I am gonna like it better than the gunmetal, I do believe. So we're gonna go ahead and just put this aside. And then we have got aluminum, a very, very bright metallic. So between these two, we're going to be able to build up some nice volumetrics, and then that aluminum is going to really help carry the colors that we put across the top of them with how light and vibrant that it is. All right, so take just a moment for this paint to dry. Now, if it's not your first time tuning into the show, well, then you know that we're going to have to use our anchor paint, something that we use for almost everything here in the studio at some point or another, and that's Leviathan Purple. That's going to be the base for a good bit of our color spectrum. We've also got Sigvald Burgundy. All right, this is going to be a really nice mid-tone for us. Another contrast paint. Again, we're going to be using an airbrush, applying it as a filter instead of the traditional way to go about it. And then we have got either Doomfire Magenta, which is a much more magenta-y color as the name would imply, or we're going to be using something in the fluorescence. Now, I'm going to reserve the right to see how the first two colors lay on there before determining which of these highlights we are going to go with. In my mind, I am hopeful that this really bright fluorescent pink right here will be the color that we can turn to, but really until I see everything together, well, I just won't know. I'm also going to be taking Azurman Blue right here. And, inspired by, if you watched Tuesday night's stream when we painted up the Chaos Rhino, we did conclude that stream with feedback from some of our viewers. And shout out Josh W. in the Hobby Goblin Discord. Of course, that link is in the video description. Had a nice little color shift going on, starting at blue, going through purple, and then up into pinks. So depending on how these purples lay down, that may be something that we do as well. Let the feet kind of have a blue, and then we're able to have that color shift from cool all the way through to very, very warm. So again, we're going to play that one by ear. Our first step, of course, is going to be getting our dry brushing done. So let's go ahead and grab out that Artis Opus dry palette. Has seen a little bit of work already. And this is what we'll be using to prepare our paints. There we go. There's a nice spot of the board we'll be able to work with right over here. I'm going to go ahead and use this airbrush to encourage the drying. I'm holding down the trigger to get airflow, but I'm pushing it forward as to not get any paint out of it. And as I suspected, this looks still very, very black. So chances are, for the future, this might be a step that we can skip. That is the best purpose of test paints, not only seeing how our color is going to go, but also helping us with our order of operations. As you know, the order of operations is probably your most reliable tool for getting things done efficiently. So having that test model lets you kind of see what steps are necessary and should go first versus what steps might be disposable, might be something that we don't need to worry about by and large. Now you're going to see throughout the course of this as well that there's a lot of stuff on here. Here we go. There's a lot of stuff on this model here that we're going to wind up painting accidentally while we're painting the rest of the model. And so that's where the order of operations comes in. Things like the tassels on his head, things like our trim work that go around the model, well, those can just get painted right over top of whatever mess we make underneath them here in the very beginning. Now this model, shout out to Julian for the assembly on it. This came out of his box of Emperor's Children, so we definitely appreciate you letting us get this one done in the studio. Once we have a paint scheme that we like, we're going to be, getting the majority of that box painted up for him. Although we'll be able to get to use it on stream, it'll be for his personal collection. So, although we want efficient, we also want to make sure they do still look pretty good. Jet says, that's me. Might have been in response to something I said a few moments ago. Definitely refresh me. But yeah, that's you for sure. KR Quintero back at it with us. Always good to see you, KR Quintero. Been painting a lot of purple myself lately. More cloaks and plumes. Sounds like you are back to work on those banana boys, huh? The Custodies getting some love from you, are they? So these are going to be fairly goblin themed, right? A lot of our pop colors are going to be things like, neon greens, like these speakers right here. I don't know how well they're showing up on the camera right now. Let's see if we can dial it in a little bit better, a little closer shot. All right. These right here look like speakers on the legs, which is very appropriate for Emperor's Children. We're probably going to do something with a green glow in there. I feel like that will look pretty cool. And then once we've got our colors on here, that's going to be what helps us determine whether we want to do silver trim or gold trim. And I'm not sure which as of yet. I really want to see what color theory suggests once we've got all those colors in place. I'm Josh, WLMAO. What's up, Josh? Yeah, that's great to see you. It's great to connect names. Isn't that the best part about the internet age? You have a name for your online gaming, a name for your Discord, a name for your YouTube, a name for your Facebook. You basically need a Rolodex just to find out of what names you're seeing, who they might belong to. Thanks for tuning in. Now, Jet, are you going to be at Mayhem this year? My intention is to go, but a lot of it comes down to finances. You know, traveling can be rather expensive. And, you know, with all of the streaming that we've been doing and the costs that are kind of associated with getting a YouTube channel going, not only just getting it started, but really maintaining it throughout the course of your growth, is also something that's pretty expensive. So, you know, I have to play it by ear. I definitely want to get up there and see my main man, Dean, if nothing else. Last year, I know I did a day trip just to make sure I could make that happen. And worst case scenario, maybe I do that again. But it sure would be nice to get to spend some time down there and actually hang out this time instead of, you know, a 7-hour drive in the morning, hang out through the afternoon, and then another 7.5 back right there that night. Those can be pretty taxing, especially when you are 100 years old. All right, so I've got all of that paint cleared out of the airbrush. We're going to be using the airbrush again here shortly. I don't need to disassemble it, but I am going to just drop some airbrush cleaner right there in the pot and let it sit there on top of the needle until we're ready for it again. That'll help us, you know, maintain that through our work session this evening. So we've got this guy going. We are going to start off with our steel. Now, because I am using these Vallejo metal colors, these Vallejo metal colors are, as you know, I love them. Right, they are one of the best metallics you can get your hands on, but they are not without their faults or their challenges. One perfect example of that is they're not necessarily the best paint for dry brushing. The paint itself is very loose and very fluid. So what I like to do is I like to get some on my wet palette. You know, and matter of fact, we're going to do it this way. We've got our unprimed side of the palette. Now this is going to be, it's going to absorb just a little bit more moisture than something that's covered in layers of paint. So we're actually going to be using this backside. Now traditionally, you do want that surface texture on there, right? And you do want, see look how bright and shiny that second one is. But you do want that surface texture on there to help you clean the brush down and whatnot. And you typically don't want to have your paint thinning out or drying out on the palette, for example. So having it, you know, with a coat of paint on it to work from, again, typically a good thing. Today, we're going a different direction. I don't like to use metallic paints in my nice brushes. We've talked about that in the past as well. However, I don't really have a junk dry brush to utilize here this evening that is in the right size that I would want it to be. So we're just going to be very careful and make sure that we use it in a way that you know, can help us maintain it. All right, you will be at Mayhem. Great to see. Seeking to redeem my first time at Mayhem 2. Played Emperor's Children at the end of 9th in Arcs of Omen and ended up holding it down at the bottom. Well, Emperor's Children is a brand new bag now. Had a great time and an even better time at Mayhem 3 with my orcs. Yeah, I remember your orcs. I remember them very, very well. I believe I saw you at Cherokee as well before Mayhem 3. Am I correct on that? Or was it after Mayhem 3? A little bit of paint dried on this dry brush here, so I guess it is one step closer to a junk brush. One thing that I like to do to revitalize a brush when it's got dried paint in it is take a little rubbing alcohol. All right, when I apply the rubbing alcohol, I keep it on the bristles, try to keep it out of the ferrule. What I don't want is rubbing alcohol to get in here and loosen up the gum or the adhesive that holds those bristles together and in there. But we do want that dried paint on the bristles to kind of let loose. So we give her a little dip and a swish. You can already see all that that's come out of it, so we're just going to go ahead and collect that up out of there. Artify makes reasonably priced dry brushes. They do, and actually I've got quite a few of them at the home studio, but the things that I have there and the things that I have here are vastly different. I've got hundreds and hundreds of paints at the home studio of just about every paint line you can imagine. You know, here in the cave, we've basically got the stuff that you randomly see on the desk in front of us with some contrast here or there, and then a wall of two thin coats paint. And the same's kind of said with our brushes, right? We've got a ton of different brush options and stuff at the studio. The problem is we just do not have a place here in the cave to store all of those art supplies that we keep at the home studio. So we're going to work with what we have, and I'm sure, going to come up with a result that we can still like. We can still kind of get behind and feel good about. Once we've done our scrubbing, over into the rinse water. I keep 2 cups of water. I don't know if you guys have seen that on stream or not. I keep one that is my clean stuff out, so it gets very dirty very quickly. And then I've got one that is my rinse once it comes out of the dirty water. You know, much like you'd have a barkeep at a restaurant, you know, with those 2 sinks. One of them's got the sanitizer in it. The other one, those dirty dishes collect in it. Same general principle. Ooh, I do have this brush. This is one of those wolf hair brushes. And it's a nice, pretty small dry brush. It actually might do what we want it to fairly well. And I can keep the metallics out of my nice brushes. We'll see. Might want to go with that slightly larger size brush that I was using moments ago. But we're going to find out that together, aren't we? So just hydrate your brush here. Make sure it's got a nice flow to it. This is the darker of the 2 colors here, and we are going to be focusing top down, starting here, moving this direction over and over again. We're not going to scrub around, right? That's not good for us. So we're just going to go ahead and start blasting our first layer of volumetric highlights on here. And it's going to cover the bulk of what you see. Very little of that undercoat is going to be left behind, but just enough. And we're done. See, nice, quick, easy Emperor's Children. Thank you guys for coming out to Hobby Pants tonight. Wouldn't it be great if it was that easy? There are times, man, getting ready for an event when you've just got so much to do. If you could just like click a mouse button and be like, boom, everything's purple. Let's go. I have to admit, there are times I would have taken advantage of that hack. Now, a lot of this stuff doesn't need the dry brush, but I'm going to be dry brushing everything just to get a point of reference, as I know, like we talked about, we'll be repainting certain things that have no business being metallic. But what I don't want to do is skip the things that I think don't need paint and then get halfway through and moving on to the next color and realized I missed an entire part that should have been metallic. So better to do everything up front, get it all comprehensive, and then we can go from there. You got it. You got it. Metallics, purples, pinks. Kind of give that candy coating sort of vibe, right? That shiny metallic. Super quick. So now you can see here, you saw that was a pool, and look at its consistency now. Now it's really started to absorb. You've got a lot of the pigment that's hanging out on the surface, and a lot of that fluid has already gone away. So I'm going to look at this kind of from a perspective of light sources. What I'd like to have is have a strong light source that's coming from one side of the model here. And that is going to be my bright pink side. And then the other side of the model will be the blues and purples. So I'm going to take that side that we want to highlight, and we're going to go at this side here because I think it's got the most interest in it, probably. Yes. And we are going to do the same thing. It's not going to be terribly evident here, but I'm just going to block out where that light should hit with just a little bit lighter of a color. And this is just kind of for me to lock in my decision more so than the impact it's going to have here. You'll see it'll become more impactful once we start dropping some colors over top of it. But yep, here, 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 down in there a little bit, and that will be our highest concentration of light. These are very cool sculpts. I definitely like them a lot. Okay, so we are done with the dry brush for a moment. We need to give that a moment to set so we can apply our first filter. Then we're going to come back with the dry brush again. Do it again. Apply our next filter. And then one final time with a much smaller application of silver. We're going to do one final dry brush in this nature to then drop our highest color. That's going to give us good color depth without just stacking the colors on one color on top of another color. We're going to be kind of reinvigorating the luster on the higher points as we move further forward and forward. So let's let that settle in for just a moment. Yeah, we've been at every Cherokee since the very first one. That is the flagship event for the Goblins, for sure. Only partially because it's the only major that we can get to in only 7 hours. Most of the majors that we have an opportunity to attend are double that drive. What's going on, Adam Peterson? Always great to see you, my friend. Yeah, KR Quintero, great point, right? Curious about how this tariff stuff affects our hobby stuff. I'm removing politics, but economically, a lot comes from EU and China. Yeah, I think that we are currently in a period where he who has the biggest pile of shame is the most insulated from price increases, right? If you got a bunch of stuff to pull off the shelves to get painted, you know, we might be approaching a time where that's the right move, right? If those tariffs hit GW products, you know, GW isn't going to swallow that tariff. You know, we as consumers are instead going to be the ones eating that tariff. So definitely it's a good time to have a pile of shame. As always, you want to help us grow, make sure you do go ahead and share this video link in your Messenger or your Facebooks, or your Instagrams, or your whatever other sources young kids use to digitally communicate. Let them know we're here hanging out. See if we can't introduce a couple of other people to this Hobby Pants series. So just comparing these airbrushes here real quick, you know, rather than having, you know, swapping out the needle when we need to, sometimes it's nice to have different airbrushes for different tasks. You see this one's got 4 bands on the very top of it here. Let's see if we can get that in focus for you, right? This is a size 4 needle. This is a size 2. You can see by the 2 bands. So to give us just a little bit more control, we're going to be utilizing the smaller needle and working in smaller puffs. So let's go ahead and get ourselves a little Leviathan ready. We don't need much. So rather than pouring, we're going to use our brush to transfer paint like we do. And the little cap we pulled off the airbrush, that's just going to go in the drawer. It's not terribly necessary for what we're doing here. It's not going to impact our spray radius or anything like that. You know, a lot of that's a spacer, right? So if you're doing things that require that your airbrush get really, really close, you know, having that spacer keeps you from accidentally scratching the surface with a needle, which sometimes can be handy, but majority of times we don't need it. I'm going to go ahead and lower these armrests, see if we can prevent the table shaking as much. Table shaking means camera shaking. White chocolate, how's it going, brother? How are you doing? Picked up some new floral pink to help with my Speeders OSL. Which paint brand did you go with? So, you know, 4 or 5 good brush loads of paint right here. All right, that goes into the dirty water. Keep the water clean. And then we're going to go about the same amount of thinner. And we're going to start there. We're going to test our opacity. If we want it to be a bit more opaque or less opaque, then we'll add a little bit more thinner. Now you see how this one runs. And you can see when it's left behind the opacity on that purple. That's what we're looking for. We want that purple to be evident in the color, but also still be able to reveal what's underneath it. I actually use 3 different Grex airbrushes. Old one does varnish primer with a 0.7. Other 2 do detail stuff. They might be the only company that even has a 0.7. I think my first Iwata had a 0.7 as well. I could be mistaken. I did switch to Infinity a few years back, and I have been all Infinity all the time ever since. Yeah, I bought my first Infinity. I was so impressed with it. I sold off all of the other airbrushes I had, which was 6 different Iwatas, if I remember correctly. I sold off all of those at a hell of a price just to make sure that I could afford to go ahead and get a second one on hand. Now I think we've got something like 5 of these airbrushes between this studio and the home studio. So like we talked about, we know that this is our corner that our light is coming from. So we are going to be focusing our energy and effort on the underside first. Nice and easy. Again, we want to keep that luster. And just tint this boy. We don't want it to go on super thick and knock down that natural shine. But you can kind of look at what we're doing here kind of as like a reverse zenithal, right? Coming from the bottom, trying to avoid the places that we want that highest saturation of light, and keeping the model at angles that allow us to protect that. So get up underneath these legs right here. And we're going to leave a little bit on that leg right there. You know, if that light's shining down, it might clip that leg right there in the back. And if that light's overhead, we want to make sure we get all the underneaths. But you can already kind of see where that light should be hitting it. Camera, you're extra shaky tonight, homie. You all right? You good, camera? that shoulder pad nice. All the stuff right here around the backpack, up underneath that backpack. Needs to make sure we get that purple in there as well. Most of that is our shadow area. I think we're going to run this up just a little bit more, and we're going to actually use the dry brush to help spell out that light a little bit better. So having a little extra purple, we're going to be removing some of it with the next stage of dry brush. All right, we're going to let that set for just a moment. Hold on, we need to get this side right here. Perfect. Underneath this arm just a little bit better. Okay, getting it started. So I think we're comfortable with the purple. Let's go ahead and blast the rest of this out of the airbrush. Prepare ourselves for step 2, which will be that Sigvald Burgundy. Sigvald Burgundy was such a good paint range, or paint to add to their range. You know, the closest thing you had to this color value before would have been that Magos, or not, Vulpes, I'm sorry, Vulpes pink, which is really more of a brown, desaturated sort of pink color. You know, rather than this one that definitely, rather than brown, uses purple to accomplish the burgundy. So definitely like that paint. Let's go ahead and get ourselves back onto our dry brush. Back into our aluminum here, our light color. We're going to be a little bit more sparse with this airbrushing now. So I'll go ahead and get a good bit of the extra stuff off of here. And then let's just go to the spot where we talked about the light. My brush is the light source coming from this direction here. So let's just go ahead and touch all of that one more time. You see we're going over some of that purple that we've got on there. Just to add a little bit of dimensionality. Again, if the light is coming from here, we're going to clip just a little bit of that shoulder right there. If I can see it, the light can see it, is kind of that rule of thumb. So this hand right here, let's go ahead and get that silver back in there. And then maybe this back leg right here. A little bit more around here. Of course, this being a character, there is a good bit more detail and definition that we're going to have to, you know, highlight as we go. Now, if this goes wrong, this is the place that I'm going to first know. Losing the model on the bottom of the frame a bit. Yep, I'll be mindful of that. Matter of fact, let's see if we can zoom out and get a little bit more working space on the desk here. All right, let's try that. I need less than I did a moment ago. So 2 good brush loads. Too thick. You see it's just sitting there? You got to loosen it up a little more. Now that's much better. Much better. Maybe even a little looser than I might have wanted it, but that's okay. It is better to be thinner and more transparent than not enough. So you can see here, that is the relationship. You can kind of see on the desk right over here. That's the relationship between the Vulpes and, I'm sorry, the Sigvald Burgundy and that Leviathan. That's what we're going for. And we want to build this up just enough to get, that nice rich color, but we don't want to beat up the luster underneath it. We don't want to overwrite that. We still want that little bit of shine. Yep, not too shabby. What's going on, Hobgob Rob? Great to see you. Let's get back in here. I think that he's too small to have all that extra space on it. So, sure, our focus is nice and crisp. So pretty easy stuff there. We're going to do one more pass with our dry brush. This time we're going to be very, very subtle with it. And we're going to be just focusing on those highest points of light. So that shoulder is going to be covered up. Get all that extra stuff out of there. And we're doing this for our brightest pink color that we want to put on here. And then I'm also going to hit the undersides of my darker purple, where we talked about shifting just a touch of blue in here. And we'll just kind of ignore that for the moment. All right, and now, I said last step was the concerning step. I liked the way that worked well enough. But this is the real tester right here. Let's check and see what the consistency of this paint is first, and the opacity of it as well. All fluorescent paints can be a little finicky, so we're just going to take this part nice and slow. And you can see it's a couple of steps that we're doing here, all right? And a lot of times the best way to increase the speed of a paint job is to remove unnecessary steps. But when you think about this in terms of batch painting, every time I'm mixing paint, I'm having to mix a tiny little bit of paint, spray it here, clean, and then move on. In the event that we're batch painting, I can mix more paint in the cup, cover more surface area with it, and overall spend less time preparing the paintbrush. So the speed definitely goes up a lot more once we're dealing with batches. All right, well, I'm liking the way that's going so far. I like how strong that pink is on top of it. I think that's a really good base to get started with our armor. And just to reiterate from the top of the video, efficiency is the name tonight, not how good can we paint a thing. So imagine these are going to end up between tabletop, tabletop plus. We're going to set that as our goal. And if we can accomplish it, big win. We can replicate it another, 40 times or so to get where we need it. Now, once we start moving into like that new Fulgrim model, we start moving into some demon princes or, kind of higher profile stuff. Well, it's going to get more attention. we're going to spend more times and opportunities to blend and all of that. This being a character, reason I opted for him is that, like we talked about with this cloak, that's going to require that I do some blending and stuff as well. I can't just do like a quick, metallic zenithal and then be like, boom, done, finished, right? It's still going to require that we hit brushwork on other parts of the model as well. So this is going to be the least amount of what we need, and we're going to use this to cool down the purples and the shadows with just a little spot right there on the bottom of it where that blue will be, fairly unmolested, right? That little bit on the backside in the darkest spots that we added that last little bit of dry brush to. Yeah, we want that to actually read and feel blue. Why no gray or white zenithal? Because we want the luster. We want the little sparkly bits underneath the paint job, like a candy coating on an automobile. If we do this over a flat paint, like a white, then it just stays flat. And then it's going to want us to do more things like edge highlighting to really bring out the shapes. The natural luster in there is going to catch light at the corners and in many ways serve as that highlight for us. If we can cut out 50% or more of our edge highlightings, we save an immense amount of time on our project. Okay, opacity is nice, but the flow is not great. I think that's good enough though. All right, so let's see where those feet are. You can see that silver shining right there. Let's start there with our blues. Thin enough that it is going to take a few extra coats. And then we're going to, again, in our deepest areas on the model, we're going to be adding more of that blue. And that blue is going to work with the purple to kind of cool down that purple a little bit. A big part of the model as it stands now is, the purple is fairly warm. The pink is very warm, right? And so adding just a little bit of color dimension is going to add, a whole lot to the model and almost give us like an iridescent, almost like kind of a color shift sort of thing is what we want to go for here. Almost giving off kind of a heat bloom sort of vibe or a muzzle burn sort of vibe. The color value as well is going to really help push those volumetrics for us, but it's also going to raise the dynamism on the light information. We say we've got light coming from another place. The best way to really relay that information is the juxtaposition of darkness against it. So that's what this bluish purple is representing for us, and the pink representing where the light is at its greatest peak. Yeah, the model is pretty fantastic. What's going on, Treachery? How are you? Yeah, I actually assembled a test model. My test model was the halberd and the whip. Julian assembled this one for me as well. Dan has the one I assembled. He went power, fist, and sword for versatility. So I said, well, if that might be the better option, let's go ahead and do it up like that then. All right, so there's a couple of spots that could use a little bit more saturation of the color, but there's also, some of those spots are also trim. So let me do a quick look here. Now here is our question at hand, right? And that is simply, well, what color do we paint the trim? We've got a whole lot of warm on here. The blue does add a fair amount of cool, but is it enough that we could then get away with gold as a trim? Or should we turn to silver as a trim and cool down the silver? That is the question. I think gold, though. I think the gold is going to be nice. I think that it's going to add just a slightly different value. And what we might do, you've heard me talk about it in the past. I'm not a huge fan of the Vallejo metal colors. If I had it here, I don't have the Vallejo gold here. If I did, well, then I might try it, because it is a very kind of desaturated gold. Not much yellow to it at all. I did not bring it with me, however. So that won't fly for that particular brand, but, you know, shout out Tooth and Coats. We have plenty of paint options here. Yeah, I think gold is going to look nice, though. And of course, there's always paint it and then repaint it based off what we like better. So why don't we try that? We are done with our dry brush for now. Let's get that dry palette out of the way. Let's go ahead and get a wet palette on the table here. What's going on, Dan? I used a light gold for my trim. Those pinks look really good. I suffered painting the GW pinks. Yeah, you know, GW does contrast right. I'm not going to trash talk them for something they do well. It is one of the few things in the paint world that, you know, that they are kind of like leading the charge on. Just about all of their other paints, I feel like there's an equivalent or better paint elsewhere. That being said, I haven't tried the newest line of Army Painter speed paints yet, so hey, maybe they're pretty good. I don't know. Kind of the same thing with Vallejo. I think it's called Instacolor or something along those lines. I haven't tried that one for comparison either. I'm just kind of holding out for, you know, once we have Tooth and Coats contrast equivalent. Yeah, I've seen the same thing as well, Kevin. Matter of fact, on some of our bigger projects, the props and replicas and stuff that we've done, we have gone that route with a silver and then painting shades of yellows and oranges over top of it to filter it down into a nice, bright and strong yellow. I am curious what chat thinks. Let's find out what chat thinks. I want to look at this from a distance to see what might be, what kind of stuff I might be up against. Where's my chat? You give me my chat. Start a poll. Trim work. All right, you guys tell me what you would like to see. If everybody comes back and says one color or another, then too easy. We can just go ahead and get that painted on there. If it's a split decision, well, then we'll just have to do a test. You know, a little hint for you guys, make it a split decision. We get to learn more from a test than just making a decision outright. Scale 75 metallics in general are absolutely fantastic. The biggest issue with them when I compare them to the metal color by Vallejo, their color options are way better than Vallejo. However, the consistency from one metallic paint to the next isn't as good. It's not as consistent across that Scale 75 line. And you know, you have to modify those to get them to flow through the airbrush well as well. I find even with brushwork, one of the few times that I'm going to use something like a flow improver is when I'm dealing with those metallics, because the medium is so thick and the pigment is so kind of chunky that in order to get a nice smooth application of it, sometimes I have to increase the surface tension of it. So, you know, I use both, and again, my very first favorite paint line, period, end of sentence, was Scale. It wasn't until I started using two thin coats that I really found myself enjoying them even more. And matter of fact, we do have some interesting options with two thin coats in terms of their metallics. Wave 3, which has not yet hit the shelves in the greater US yet, has brought us additional metallic colors. Let me get this screen back up here because I can no longer see what's on camera. But look at these colors, for example. These are crispy metallics from two thin coats. I haven't found a place to use them yet. Although that Omega blue could be pretty interesting for something like 1,000 Suns. Other non-traditional metallic colors that they've got over here. Very, very interesting options. And then this is one that, I don't know, maybe we should have a consideration for this one. This is blue steel. This is very close to one of those Scale metallic colors as well. All right, 57% saying gold. I'm going to continue my little stretch here real quick while you guys cook that poll up. From a distance, I think that this guy looks pretty cool. I think he's got pretty good values from a distance. It's really going to require all the extra details get painted on there for it to all really kind of come together. There is indeed treachery. I'm hoping to have my hands on that Grimdark set here very soon. I know it's in the announcement phase. I don't think it's a Kickstarter. I think it's an announcement just of something that is coming out soon. But I got to look into that a bit further. All right. Well, if you guys want to see gold first, let's have a look at our gold options from Two Thin Coats. The lightest of them, glistening gold. So that should pop off of there pretty good. The second in line, heirloom gold. A little browner than the other one. And then their richest gold, dragon's gold. Interesting thing about two thin coats, if you didn't know, two thin coats uses actual metal pigment, right? So the luster coming off of two thin coats is actual metallics, whereas other companies use a mica. Does that make them better? To be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know all of the science behind it. I know that Vallejo model color, the pigment is so small in it. That's why it's able to flow like it does and lay as flat as it does. But let's start blocking some of this in. I have a painting handle, so this part is kind of unnecessary, but I tend to like to have a glove on the hand that I might be handling the model with. The brush hand doesn't matter as much, but the oils in your hand can have an impact on the paint. That gold does pop off of there pretty nice, I'll be honest. A little better than I might have thought. You know, I mean, it does make sense color theory wise. Look to our color wheel. Remember, you get the highest contrast the further apart a color wheel can be. The further apart colors are on a color wheel, and the farthest that one can travel is directly across the wheel. Right? If we go too far around, then we start working back into those same color elements again. So I can see just off of the rip that this violet purple goes really well in yellow oranges, yellows, and even yellow greens. Right? So mathematically, the science of color, if you will, right? It says that this is a good decision. Silver is a neutral color. Silver doesn't have a temperature value. So we have to modify it to make it either cold or warm, right? So I do think that this is likely the answer, this gold here. Before we make that decision outright, let's paint a couple of spots on here with another color option, just to kind of see how that's going to go. So let's go with a silver, and we want something that's pretty bright. So we're going to go with something like this mithril blade. Give that a test. Make sure our brush is hydrated. That should be all the thinning the paint needs to flow well out of the bottle. It's not going to flow great. It's a little thick. So we'll do this hip plate right here. Now this, my initial instinct was that the silver was going to be the right answer. I can already tell you, I think that gold does a lot better. So I think that we want to stay in the wheelhouse of that gold. One other thing I do want to test before we make that final determination. let's see what that blue steel looks like. Now that blue steel, let's go back to the color wheel. This is where we're going to start talking about tetrads. All right, that's a combination of 3 colors in a scheme that work harmoniously. Right, we're in this range. This is, you know, kind of at the blue. All right, so if we go to here, our tetrad would put us right there between that yellow and that yellow-orange. It narrows down where we had just straight across from itself, we had kind of the 3 colors that all represented a good, strong contrast. A tetrad is typically going to dial you into a specific color range and not give as much depth of play. So we're going to try this. It's going to call for a lot more yellow on the model elsewhere, right, to fill out that tetrad, where we might find that getting that purple mixed with the yellow-orange, then we can do something in maybe even in that teal range, create ourselves a tetrad between teal and green for the other accoutrement, the cloak and all of that kind of stuff. I think that's likely going to be our best bet. But again, we are doing some experiments here today. So I'm going to come right back over top of this gold with this blue. And this is actually a really good example of that color wheel at work as well, right? Because of that blue and how close it is in proximity to those purples on the color wheel, it looks really nice. I'm not going to lie to you. I actually really like it a lot, but it's not as punch you in the mouth as that gold is. That gold is undeniable when you look at it, right? There's no disputing it at all. It's strong, right? So I do think probably gold is the best way to go. That is pretty sharp though, man. I really do kind of, what do you guys think? Weigh in on me. Do you like the gold? Do you like the bluish silver? Which would you pick? Because frankly, I'm torn. Let that marinate for a moment, because I got to think about that, and I'm curious what you guys think as well. Now, I will say if we wind up going gold trim, almost 100% any silver would be that blue. Much like white chocolate says right there, right? If we opt for the gold on the trim, that blue still has a place on the model. That crest on the back of him, for example, that could look really nice in that bluish silver. The sword, the hilt, the other metallic bits that are non-trim related would, you know, could also go with that silver as well and keep that incorporated. And that gives us, again, boom, 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 right? Now, what we're probably going to want to go for in there, rather than a tetrad, the name evades me at the moment, but it's 4 points of color. So boom, 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 boom. Get my arm out of the way for you, right? So your purple, your yellow, your blue, your orange, or going even further this way, your magenta, which is, this is closer to our world right here. Straight across is that green. We talked about doing green highlights for power, right? That's a great accent color. Blue goes into that yellow-orange. So, you know, that's our gold, right? That could as well be good options for us. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and paint this trim up gold, and then we're going to go ahead and just keep this blue steel handy for if ever we have to do any kind of modeling. The blue steel. What is that, a school for ants? would need to be at least twice that size. Yeah, Josh or Jet, I feel the same way. I do really kind of like that blue as well. And I think that both ways could actually look pretty stunning. I think we do get stronger color contrast, though, off of this gold. One of the values that blue adds is, of course, a temperature value. It cools it down right next to all that warm. This yellow is very warm as well. So for temperature contrast, it doesn't do great. But in terms of color contrast, it does do great. So we kind of have to pick which is going to be most important to us. And I think we'll have plenty of other opportunities for temperature contrast, but that's also why it's so important that we did what we did on the back by adding that nice cool on the back too, because now our full composition does have that nice temperature contrast. So I think we're making a good decision here, guys. So let's just get this blocked in fairly quickly, but still stay neat with it. And you can see my pinky finger right here? Ding, 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 ding. We're mounting that on the base, resting it on my thumb, right? And that gives us really, really good brush control. If you find that you get the shakes from time to time, this is going to be the best way to do it. Anchor as many points of your arm down as possible while you're painting and allow your wrist to do the movements for you, right? Rather than having your whole hand free, lock it down. In addition, my elbows are firmly planted. Guys, I have to say, I am pleasantly surprised at the minimal amount of trim that is on these models compared to those World Eaters I finished here recently. The World Eater commission was like soul-sucking, the amount of gold trim that had to be painted. By far the least enjoyable part of that paint job. And we just want to be slow and steady here. It's going to be really hard to touch up the gradients that we put down with that airbrush. So we want to kind of protect them where we can. And this is where I should glove up this other hand, because like you saw there, I'm going to need to use that pinky finger on the model here and there as well. You see, got their trim nerfed. Hilarious. I will say then, that's like the second time that a nerf has been good. The first time, of course, being the Harlequin treatment in 9th edition. Yeah, Rob, I said it. And I would love nothing more than to share with you guys a hack for how to do trim quickly. But I just don't know that there is one. Now, if that doesn't hold on there, then we're going to go ahead and score that cork to give it a little more grip. Now, because we've done light information with the way that we've applied our base coats here, that does mean that whatever color we use, whether we had done that blue, whether we do this gold on the trim, we are going to need to give it a treatment that acknowledges that color change, the shadow and light. So we're going to need to do something on the gold here, on the blue, that's a little bit different than the gold on that top pink. And I've got some ideas, but one thing at a time. All right, I'm going to need to look at a reference picture for that kneecap to see if we want to do the gold for all of that around there as well. I don't know yet. So we're going to just knock out the things that I know, and then we can answer any questions that we have. Looking forward to getting my hands on a fulcrum. You know, since I've started doing streams, I've been taking on bigger projects closer to showcase output, and I've actually been really enjoying that side of the hobby. I've spent several years now doing the efficiency painting, big batches, just cohesive paint styles, but really not a lot of like high skill techniques. So taking the opportunity to grow as a painter and do more of that stuff, you know, I like that. I like the idea of that a lot. Okay, so this under whatever this leg wrap is, that goes gold. All right, treasury, I'm starting to see all the extra trim I didn't see initially. So still a fair amount of trim on here and there. To clean that up a little bit. Yeah, getting this army fully ready for stream is definitely going to be an all hands on deck right here from these jerseys you see on stream. We've done it once before. We sat down, actually twice before, to sit down to paint up the bulk of an army in a hurry. With a process line, everybody's kind of got a color and a job. And being able to have people to share that part of the experience, not only is it more fun, but you can get a lot more done in a lot less time. So I'm definitely going to be looking to leverage that. I bet the only thing less fun than painting a bunch of gold trim is probably watching somebody paint gold trim. Oh man, you guys dropped a lot of comments. I'm going to check up real quick. Elbows on the table, your manners, sir. EC got their trim nerfed. Saw that, I love it. Everyone watching, do us a favor and like the video. Big please. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That'd be absolutely huge. You know, it's our job to let, you know, YouTube know when we do or don't like something. So that helps us grow immensely. Could you almost use the steel in the shadow showing the gold as a result of the light? Not really. I think what we're going to be doing is warming up the gold in the shadows and then highlighting the gold in the light with a lighter gold that will kind of like look like light kind of reflecting off of it. Reason I say it probably wouldn't work, white chocolate, is that the color values aren't going to change, right? If it's a purple light or a pink light that's lighting them up like it is, then that would mean that that gold would have to take a pink transition. And to go into a blue transition with it and then knock out all of that yellow pigment, I don't know how well that would read. True to their namesake, it is going to take 2 coats of gold everywhere that this gold is going. All right, all right. I am tired of fighting with you already. So we mean business. There are certain colors, Adam. You know, blocking in colors is my least favorite part. There are certain colors that like feel really good once you get them started to add into the model, but a lot of times, yeah, just the blocking in colors is kind of the path into and out of the ugly phase. So it really depends on which part of that path that you're on, right? Ah, my hack did not help apparently. Now as my gold sits on that wet palette, it is getting looser and looser and harder to control. So rather than fight it, let's take a moment and work with it another way. Use a dry palette for it. Then we can keep our brush hydrated. That'll help us control the moisture content that is in here. I'm going to not paint those wings. I think, white chocolate, I think the wings on the inside of this shoulder pad here are a really good candidate for that blue and silver. So we're going to leave that unpainted for now. And we're going to put that blue metallic on it here in a few moments. See if we like it. Worst case, we paint over it. Best case, we got to incorporate that color that we like. The trim on this blue and purple part is a little harder to see, A, because it's darker, B, because the additional layer of paint is knocking down some of the luster. Finding it very hard to see exactly what's going on there. So let's put on these magnifiers real quick just to make sure that I can hit that line. If we drop off of camera, if my big old melon gets on camera, just forgive me for a moment. All right, and we could take a long time to make sure everything is all perfect. Our flavor of gold that we're using tonight is the lightest range from Two Thin Coats. This is glistening gold. So it still has all the punch that you'd want from a gold, but it's just not quite as strong. It's not quite that like Retributor armor, like from the GW line. But I don't want to get lost in the sauce and spend 3 hours just painting gold tonight, you know. So I'm not going to worry about as neat as possible. I'm just going to worry about coverage at the moment. There's, you know, and if I don't hit my lines, I'm going to try and go under rather than going over, because I can always come back and clean it all up by very carefully taking it all the way to the line. What's going on, Angel Soto? Great to see you. I saw your comment about the Gargant, KR. I'm not sure if I replied to it or not, but definitely thank you very much. I was very happy with how that turned out. Learned a lot on that project. That has actually been posted up today. I got it in the mail yesterday. JC should have it tomorrow. And he is, I believe, already put the link up for it for any of the people that are doing the raffle digitally. If they're not going to be there, he wanted to make sure that people could still have a chance at any of the things going on the raffle. So if that's something that you might want to try and risk your luck for, any of you guys out there, you know, that's for a great cause. Buy a couple raffle tickets, maybe take home a Frost Gargant painted right up here on stream. Okay, we went a little wide on that one. Man, the head is almost all trim. Make life easy. We're just going to paint right over the eyes too, rather than trying to dance all around them right now. We're going to come back and block those in later. Kind of the same thing with these breathing tubes on his helmet right here. That's going to get its own paint too, so I don't need to be too careful around those. I can kind of overlap those, get a little gold on there. It won't hurt nobody. Same thing with that hair. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere, chat. And I think we're going to do the same thing like we did on that shoulder. This iconography, this right here on his backpack. Let's save that for that silver as well. Off to a pretty good start, I think. Went a little wide on the gold. I think I've got some ideas on how I might be able to clean that up. Okay, what we're going to do here, we're going to go ahead and, I've been utilizing this brush for a minute, trying to keep the paint hydrated. But, you know, of course, the longer as Battle to End Alzheimer's for anybody interested in Maryland next weekend, there is a link in all of the Gargant videos. It might even be in the video description of this one here. I'm not 100% sure without looking at it, but I know for a fact every one of those videos for the Gargant does have that link. So even if you wanted to spend $1 or $2 on a raffle ticket, even if you weren't looking to win something, guys, that is an incredible charity. J.C. Watts, you know, the guy who got it all started, is an incredible dude as well. So if the charity wasn't good enough to support, I promise you the dude is. So definitely go give it a look. Okay, trim wasn't that bad. Wasn't that bad. So there we have it. There's our trim in gold. So what I'd like to do here in a moment, we're going to let this set, marinate on it for just a moment, and then we're going to start baking in that blue where we can. All right, that's the light side. This is the dark side. So you see what I mean, right? Like the light side and the dark side, you know, being that the gold doesn't change at all from one side to the other, that's kind of defying that lie that we're telling, that there is some sort of light source over here on this side lighting it up. So, you know, we've got ways to address that. Let's let that sit for a moment. A couple of things I do really like this leg right down here, like the all the color movement in there from one side to the other. And a lot of that's going to be going away, of course, because this little like leg cover that he's got on. Hey, great to see you, Kevin. Appreciate you, brother. That's going to be changing and covering up a lot of that, but it does read those colors very well. All right, let's let that marinate for a moment. It reads pretty well outside of arm's reach. You can really, you know, it does kind of muddle together just a little bit on certain angles. On other angles, it definitely looks better than others. So before we get into the silver, what I would like to do is I would like to go and address our color situation as we discussed it. And what we're going to do is we're going to warm up the gold even further in the shadowed recesses to shift those colors a little bit. warming it up by effectively making it darker at the same time. That sound like a weird contradiction? Yeah, I think so. So here's what we're going to do with it. We're going to take a little bit of this Sigvald Burgundy. We're going to put this on our wet palette here, just a brush load. First of all, hydrate the brush. You know how we do. Always hydrate your bristles before you touch your paint with it. That'll stop the capillary effect from running all of that pigment and harmful medium up into your ferrule. And then we are going to water this way, 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 way down. Let me see if I can get this palette over here so you can kind of see what we're doing. Even more than that. Again, a test here, guys. We don't like it, we put the gold right back over top of it. Getting closer. One more sizable brush load here. Super thin. And that's about what we're looking for. So anywhere the blue starts, I'm going to just start brushing this on here. Now I don't really want it to collect. So those areas where it's collecting a little bit, we're going to come back while it's still wet and collect up those puddles. All right, Cork, I give up. I give up on you. Game Envy, I appreciate your effort, but it's not working for me tonight. And this isn't doing much, but hopefully it's doing enough. And it might take a couple of passes before we really see it. And now what I will do is let it pool around that gold. Let's focus this in, guys. That's also going to help clean up those edges, right? Little spots where that gold may have gone a little bit too far over the edge. And we're just focusing this primarily over the blue. Now, I tend to like to use Gilliman flesh as my color enhancer for golds. And it's possible that might have been the right answer here as well. We're just glazing this in here. I'll tell you, I really do like the way it collects around the gold on the armor. So even if this doesn't accomplish what we want it to accomplish um, in terms of adding a shadow effect, it is doing a really nice job of hiding where that gold did go over the edge. So you'll see I'll just fill that little recess right there. I don't know if you could tell, a little bit of gold had evaded me right there and got on that flat panel. So we're just filling that trough with a nice strong color. This got a good bit of vibrancy to it as well. Because this was our mid-tone, that means it's still going to stand up over the rest of the model. I think where it's the highlight, the biggest highlights. That super bright pink. A little gold we missed on the back there. That's all right. That outline really helps make that gold pop too. All right, collect it off the surface. No puddles. Of course, for that, I'm just dabbing my brush on my paper towel. All right, dab the brush, pull the puddle. You can see it working a little bit here, I think. All right. I want to see that blue on here. Let's get that going. Take what we learned with that gold, and we're going to put this directly into a dry palette. This is a little bit thicker of a paint than that gold is, so we're going to have to loosen it up more. It might have actually been okay on the wet palette, with that considered. Would have been easier with the backpack in subassembly, but we can work with it. We can just leave some of that purple down in the recesses. Be a nice shadow for us. Though, you know what? I think dropping a little bit of a wash in there, a little panel line wash in there, will have a greater effect though. So, for the sake of speed and efficiency, we're going to block it all in. Make sure we get it up to full opacity. Adds a nice element, I think. What's going on, Johnny Z? Appreciate you, my friend. Appreciate you. Yeah, we're figuring this one out as we go. Drucci Violet. All right. I definitely could see that working. So I wonder if we're going to do the ribbing in here, if we're going to do that black or not. I don't know yet. I think so. I think that that would be a really good way to like get a lot of separation, right, at the waist from those two panels. All right, what was the other thing we talked about could look good in blue? Yeah, Treasure, we might have to try that. Paint his nails. Give it some separation from the rest of the gauntlet right here. All right, so next parts we're gonna need to figure out gonna be the cloth covering that drapes over top of him. Don't know what we're doing there with that yet, but we'll figure it out. And now I'm just basically looking for other places to add this blue to make it all just a little more cohesive. Get that just blocked in. We'll do something cool with that later. At least this works for showing off the model, even if it can't take the tension. Yeah, it is nice, Adam, to have a cool addition being added to it. Again, that the purples and the pinks, very, very warm. Right, so being able to add that silver in there at certain places, we get great color contrast from that pink to the gold, but you don't get any temperature contrast. So being able to add in some temperature contrast here and there, I think it definitely adds a little bit of value, for sure. Okay, I want to see what this is going to look like if we black that in. Now, because black is bad, we're going to go back to that very first color that we pulled out, that it's almost black, but it's actually a really dark purple. And guys, black isn't bad, right? I've got style preferences, little things that I prefer over other things. If you like your Nuln Oils, if you like your black paints, good. Enjoy them. There's nothing wrong with them. And there are cases where black is better, just simply put. I'm just of the mindset that that is a rare occurrence. And for many people, black is kind of a staple in their paint jobs. If you watch that Frost Gargant video, I didn't put black on my palette a single time throughout the entire video. Same to be said with a lot of the orcs from the Hobby Goblins channel. Unfortunately, those are buried behind members only. You know, long story on that. Yep, that really strengthens that panel right there, giving it really nice separation. And I think you guys can see the amount of times we've had to stop and look at something, maybe put a poll up for people's opinions, you know, do the arm's length test. All of that is just par for the course when you're doing test models, with the hope being that we get to answer all the questions right now. And so when it comes time for that batch paint, we know what we're doing. We don't have to ponder up on it. And one of the things that I'm thinking for the robes and the drapery is I'd like to make it look like patchwork flesh. I think that would be pretty cool. But like we talked about in that feedback video, Jet, and that's one that if I don't do it very well, it could be a detriment rather than add value. So we'll be thinking on that. We're not going to have time to get that far along tonight anyway. We're basically approaching what we can get accomplished this evening. And I don't want to get into a project that's going to be halfway done. So we'll be continuing this guy on Tuesday. While we're at it, I'm just going to use this to black out a few other things. Things that are kind of distracting from the rest of the piece. I imagine we're going to find a fairly vibrant color that's going to end up on these tassels. But blacking them out is just going to help me focus on the things that I'm trying to evaluate. So I'm thinking blue on this guy back here. I'm thinking gold off his little pointy helmet. Let's get a glimpse of what those look like. And these colors are kind of zinchy without being too in your face about it. Or Slaneshi, rather. And in my typical fashion, I want to point out that short of airbrushing, not a whole lot of specialty stuff we're doing here tonight. Not a whole lot of like really difficult techniques. I think the most difficult thing that we're doing tonight is our color study. Right, the considerations for what colors go where and why. I think that's the hardest thing we got to do tonight. But the thing is, color theory works because it looks good. So even if you don't know color theory, but you're willing to experiment, you can try something out. If you like it, if it looks good, chances are it's good color theory. If it doesn't quite sit right, or if you outright don't like it, well then the color theory is probably bad. So just go back to your color wheel, whether it's a online color wheel that you can just take a look at a Google image search and find something to reference, or a hard copy, if you will, that you have in front of you. And take a look. Find out, what is my primary color? What's the number one thing on my model? Right? And then you can take a look at the complementary colors, right? The tetrads, right? And find out, use that to help inform your scheme. Learn color theory through practice. I am working on a color theory video, specifically how to use a color wheel and kind of explain all the finer points of it. That's going to be coming here soon. It'd be a short video, like, 15 minutes or so, 10 to 15. And that's something I'd really like to start rolling out across this channel. You see, we're starting to do it for our Battle Report channel as well, where we are starting to discuss tactics a bit more so. Well, this is kind of the same thing. The science of the game, the science of paint and color, they're related. And I feel like there's more value that someone might be able to extract from a small and digestible video, rather than a 3-hour stream. If that's something you guys are excited about, make sure you let me know in the comments. If there's something in that vein, something academic about the painting process that you'd like me to do kind of a deep dive on, right? Let me know. I've got plans for quite a few different topics, but before I just rattle them all off, I'm going to put that out in front of you guys, right? Instead of distracting you with a bunch of technical names and stuff. Tell me, what is it that you really hope to gain from watching this channel in terms of your paint journey? Is it technical stuff? Is it motivational stuff? Is it a swift kick in the jimmy? That was for Rob. I'm just curious. I'm curious to know what you guys yearn for. Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm a pro or I'm an art teacher or any of that. That's not the case. I'm a painter, just like you guys. However, I've got a lot of experience now. And, between, myself and my network of people that have been doing this for a long time, I know that I can find the answers for the questions that you have. And some of those answers might be subjective. Because that's what art is, right? Art is subjective in many ways. But the first step is knowing where your interest lies. All right, let's see what we're cooking with. Well, I think that is a good point for us to stop this evening. There's a lot of cleanup still left to do. A lot of this color is on here kind of messy. So, you know, we can tighten a lot of it up, adding additional highlights. We've got a lot of other details to pick out, but by and large, I think that we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. We look at the top of it here. You've got kind of a triangle of that blue. That helps the composition by saying that blue exists multiple places. As we turn it, well, you still have that triangle. You've got the claw, you've got the sword, you've got the top bit, right? We turn it again, you've still got your triangle. Right, a little less of a triangle here. Maybe you get more of a triangle like this, but again, that blue steel in multiple places across the model. So cohesion is always the prime thing we want to accomplish. You got to have something in there that looks like it belongs there. If it doesn't look like it belongs there, it's going to be distracting. And no matter how cool of the color it is or how cool of the application it is, if it distracts you from the whole of the piece, then you're falling short. Right? All of these colors need to support each other, right? And so that's kind of the thing we're testing for. There might be a couple of other places to add to it. For instance, this leg down here, we might opt to go the blue silver around there. We might opt to do gold down there. After I do a bit of research, I'm going to find out, you know, what other people have done for it and gather my references. I do know El Miniaturista treated that as a glowing speakery sort of thing. Ideally, that's what I would like to do, but we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get to it. But there you have it, a little bit shorter of a stream tonight, but, you know, not by much. We still got, you know, almost 3 hours in here, and I appreciate you spending those 3 hours with me, you know. Doing it like this is way more fun than painting by myself, and I look forward to opportunities to maybe sit down and paint with any of you guys in person at some point in the future if the stars align. We got Hobby Goblins was started in the air of making art with friends, right? That's what me and Cryface of Wake and Make Mondays, you know, that's how we got started in general, right? Just getting together, deciding we're going to do something creative and collaborative and see where that takes us. And, well, it wound up taking us all over the country to some of the biggest events in the country, meeting some of the coolest people in the game, you know, and I get to continue to do so right here on YouTube. So how lucky am I? Appreciate you guys being here again tonight. If you like the video, make sure you hit that like button. Of course, let me know in the comments of the video on demand what type of short form content you guys would like to see the most, and we'll use that to kind of put together the order of those videos. Any other changes or additions to the show that you might find valuable to you in your personal journey, of course, voice them there as well. I'd love to hear all of that from you guys. So until next time, keep your pants on.